Night draped over New York City like a velvet curtain, but inside the glass walls of Wolf's studio, the light still blazed bright. On the 28th floor, Adrian Wolf stood silently, hands in his pockets, sharp eyes staring down at the glowing streets below. Tomorrow marked the unveiling of the most iconic architectural project of his career at the Architecture Expo, a design 3 years in the making. But his mind wasn't on the model displayed at the center of the room, nor on the dazzling stage where he was expected to speak. Instead, it was locked on a single, time-worn sheet of paper resting on the desk behind him. The final shareholder contract left behind by his father. Adrian Wolf, CEO and heir to Wolf Studio, was not a man easily shaken. He had rebuilt this company from the ashes of a scandal 7 years ago after the woman he once loved, Serena Vale, stole his designs and sold them to a competitor. The betrayal led to his father's stroke, and his death followed just months later. Since that day, Adrian had sealed himself inside walls made of stone and silence, living only for work. He stepped slowly toward the desk, lifting the contract in his hands. The bold black letters pressed down on every breath he took. Adrian Wolf must marry before his 35th birthday to retain ownership of 51% of Wolf Studio. Otherwise, his shares will be redistributed to existing shareholders according to current percentages. Just over 3 weeks remained, and if he failed to act, Serena, who had been quietly buying shares through intermediaries, could take control of the company he had bled to protect. Adrian clenched the contract tightly, his nails digging into his skin. He didn't believe in love, and he certainly didn't trust anyone who walked into his life after what happened. But this was no longer a choice. It was a final battle to protect everything his father had built. The laptop screen flickered beside him, illuminating a message from Marcus Lynn, his longtime lawyer and the only friend he trusted. "I found someone who can help. She's already on her way. You'll meet her tonight." Adrian frowned, tossing his phone onto the desk with a soft thud. Help! He didn't need pity. But Marcus wasn't a fool. If he said it was worth hearing out, it was at least worth seeing. Arms crossed, Adrian fixed his cold gaze on the door. He waited to see what this so-called solution looked like. The knock came right at 10 p.m. Adrian didn't turn around. His eyes remained fixed on the door, cold and unreadable. "Come in," he said, his voice deep and dry, as if all emotion had long been buried beneath years of ash. The door opened. Marcus Lynn entered with his usual confident smile, but it wasn't him who made Adrian freeze. It was the woman walking behind him. She stood at the threshold wearing a faded denim jacket, her brown hair tied into a slightly messy bun, clutching a thick sketchbook in her arms. No cocktail dress, no heels, no makeup. She looked nothing like someone who belonged in Adrian's pristine, high-stakes world. And yet, her eyes, bright and unwavering, made it impossible to look away. "Adrian, this is Isla Rivera," Marcus said with enthusiasm, "a freelance eco-architect, and the one who can help you with your little contract issue." Isla stepped forward, placing the sketchbook firmly on the desk, as if she were used to skeptical stares like his. "I can help you, Mr. Wolf," she said, her voice clear and steady. "I know your situation, and I know how to turn it into an advantage." Adrian crossed his arms, scanning her from head to toe. A freelance designer? She looked more like a street artist than someone who could save the architectural empire he'd fought to preserve. "An advantage?" he asked, his voice flat. "What exactly do you know about my situation that gives you the nerve to say that?" Isla didn't flinch. Her eyes locked onto his. Not confrontational, not afraid, just calm, unshaken. "I know you need a wife, or at least someone to play one to retain control of your firm," she said. "And I know how to make it believable, not just to the press, but to your shareholders." She paused, then gave a subtle, knowing smile. "You don't have to believe me yet, just try me." Adrian turned to Marcus, voice clipped. "Where the hell did you find her?" Marcus only shrugged, calm as ever. "Just hear her out." Adrian exhaled and leaned back against the edge of his desk. His voice remained cold. "Let's say I agree. This is strictly transactional. You do your job, I pay you. No one crosses the line into my personal life. Understood? Isla nodded without hesitation. Understood, Mr. Wolf. Then why do you want to do this? Adrian's voice dropped, touched with suspicion. Money? Fame? Or is there something I haven't figured out yet? Isla was quiet for a beat. Something flickered in her eyes, a shadow of something she wasn't ready to reveal. I have my reasons, she said softly but firmly. Adrian frowned. That strange feeling again. Curiosity, almost concern. But he shoved it down. Fine, he said. Where do you start? Isla smiled faintly, opened her sketchbook, and pulled out her phone. Within minutes, she had created a new Instagram account titled Adrian and Isla, uploaded an edited photo of Adrian from last year's Expo with the faint silhouette of a woman beside him. The caption read, Inspiration is love. A and I. She turned the phone to him. First step is media presence. We need people to believe it before the shareholders start asking questions. Adrian raised a brow. Within seconds, the post had dozens of likes. The hashtag #WolfCouple was already spreading. You're fast, he admitted, then quickly added. But don't think this is enough. Architectural media isn't easy to fool. Neither are my shareholders. I know, Isla replied, confident, which is why I've already crafted our story. We met at a small exhibit in Brooklyn. You were intrigued by my sustainable designs. It's simple, but it works. She lowered her gaze to her sketchbook, her pencil moving quickly and precisely. Adrian studied her. Under the glow of the office lights, her features looked soft, but resolute. And in that moment, he knew Isla Rivera might not belong in his world, but she was far from ordinary. The Wolf Studio building still glowed while the city slept. On the 28th floor, only two remained, Adrian and Isla. It was nearly 1 a.m. The latest design draft of their eco-housing project stretched across the large work table, surrounded by notes, blueprint sheets, and material samples. The air was still, broken only by the soft scratch of pencils and the click of Adrian's keyboard. Isla leaned over one of the sketches and nudged it toward Adrian. This wooden joint here, it might shrink with weather changes. If we switch to a mechanical expansion joint, the structure will hold better. Adrian tilted forward, his sharp eyes scanning her suggestion. After a few seconds, he gave a short nod. You're right. The tech team missed that. Isla didn't gloat. She simply smiled and continued making adjustments. In the dim light of the desk lamp, Adrian quietly studied her. No dramatics, no need for validation, just quiet precision and passion flowing through each stroke. It was rare in this industry, where so many chased recognition over substance. At that moment, she reached for a pencil at the same time he did. Their hands touched. Adrian froze. Her palm was warm, soft, and surprisingly steady. A jolt traveled down his spine, like his skin had remembered something it had forgotten long ago. The simple presence of someone else, a touch that carried no agenda. She didn't pull back immediately, but didn't linger either. She just kept sketching, unfazed. But for Adrian, it was the first time in years that he didn't feel the urge to pull away. Where did you study design? He asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Isla looked up, surprised by the personal question. I didn't. I'm self-taught. No formal education. Then how are you this good? She shrugged, smiling softly. I used to be homeless with my mom. We slept on park benches, picked through garbage for change. But I loved to draw. Drawing was how I imagined a better life. When I was old enough, I'd sneak into the city library and teach myself how to read blueprints. Adrian said nothing. Something tightened inside him. Isla continued, her voice steady. One day, my mom collapsed from exhaustion outside a shop. A stranger called an ambulance. Later, he helped her get a job. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't even have a roof over my head. Adrian watched her, his eyes dark and unreadable. He didn't speak. He just listened. As Isla turned back to the blueprint, he slid a cup of coffee across the table toward her. Thanks, she said, surprised. You remind me of something I used to believe in, Adrian murmured, almost to himself. What's that? Kindness. He looked up at her. Something I forgot a long time ago. They worked on into the night, until Isla eventually dozed off at the table, overwhelmed by fatigue. Adrian sat still, watching her for a long moment. Then he stood, removed his suit jacket, and gently draped it over her shoulders, instinctively. She shifted in her sleep, then settled. And for the first time in years, Adrian didn't feel alone in his own space. The next morning, when Isla woke up, still curled at the work table with Adrian's jacket draped over her shoulders, her eyes lingered on the empty seat across from her. She touched the fabric gently, as if trying to hold on to the warmth he left behind. They didn't speak much that morning, but something between them had quietly shifted. A few days later, Adrian asked Isla to join him on a trip to Paris. A key supplier of sustainable materials had suddenly delayed shipment. If unresolved, the delay could derail Wolf Studios' launch timeline. Adrian usually trusted no one, but this time he wanted her there. You see what others miss, he said, voice low but certain. I need your eyes. Paris greeted them with a chill in the air and a cloudy sky above the Seine. The meeting at the textile plant was tense. The factory director was arrogant, refusing to adjust delivery schedules. Adrian didn't blink. If you refuse, he said coldly, eyes like steel, we'll find another supplier, and I'll make sure no one in this industry works with you again. The room turned to ice, but moments later the director caved and signed the amendment. Isla stood beside Adrian, quiet admiration in her eyes. After leaving the factory, Adrian didn't return to the hotel. There's somewhere I want you to see, he said. They walked along the Seine. The fading sunlight danced on the river's surface like threads of gold. A flower vendor offered roses. Adrian stopped, purchased a single red rose, and without a word, gently tucked it into Isla's hair. It suits you, he murmured, his gaze softer than she'd ever seen. Isla paused, hand rising to touch the flower. You're more romantic than I expected. They shared a small laugh, walking together under the umbrella Adrian opened when a soft drizzle began. The silence between them no longer felt distant, but peaceful. They stopped at a riverside cafe. Warm, golden light spilled through the windows, casting a gentle glow. Sitting across from each other, their fingers curled around warm mugs of coffee, steam fogging the glass. When did you fall in love with design? Adrian asked, voice calm, deep. Isla looked away for a moment before replying. Since I was little, but I had nothing to chase it with. Her voice softened. I grew up with my mother, homeless and forgotten. She collapsed one day from hunger, and I thought I'd have to quit school. A stranger helped us that day. He called an ambulance, then quietly helped my mom get a job at a studio she never thought she'd enter. I never knew who he was until I saw your eyes. Adrian said nothing. The story echoed something deep in his memory. He just clenched his cup tighter. And you? Isla asked gently. Have you ever been in love? A wry smile touched his lips. Once. Serena Vale. She used to mean everything. Isla stayed quiet. Adrian continued, slower now, like reopening an old wound. I trusted her with everything. Every design, every plan. She sold them, caused the scandal that broke my father. His voice dropped. He had a stroke, never recovered. I lost him, lost my trust in people. Since then, I locked the door to everything else. Isla reached out, placing her hand softly on his steady and warm. You're not alone anymore, she whispered. I'm here, and I won't hurt you. They sat there, watching the rain fall against the window. Two hearts finding understanding in silence. Later that night, back at the hotel, Adrian was reviewing documents when he overheard Isla's voice through the wall. Keep the supplier quiet. Don't let him find out. He froze, heart pounding. The words echoed like ghosts, reminiscent of the secret calls Serena used to make. For a moment, doubt returned, but then he remembered Isla's eyes by the Seine, the way she smiled when he placed the rose in her hair, She's not like Serena, he told himself. And yet, a seed of suspicion had already begun to take root. Isla had no idea that the words she'd whispered that night had struck a nerve Adrian hadn't even realized was still raw. He'd convinced himself she wasn't like Serena. But the phrase, "Don't let him find out," echoed louder than reason, and slowly, quietly, doubt crept in. The next morning, New York was blanketed in thick fog. Inside Wolf Studio's office, Adrian Wolf sat frozen in front of his laptop. His eyes were bloodshot from sleepless hours, but not from work. From one subject line, "Ask your fake wife." It was from Serena Vale. He clicked it open. Inside were only a few words. "You're a fool to trust her. Isla Rivera isn't who you think she is. Ask her what she's hiding and why she really got close to you. Here's the proof. Don't be deceived again." Attached were photos. One of Isla in Paris, tucked in a hallway, phone in hand, her expression wary. Another was a screenshot of a supposed message between her and an unknown contact. "The collection is almost ready. Don't worry, he doesn't suspect a thing." Adrian felt the air leave his lungs. Paris, the hotel, don't let him find out. It all aligned like pieces in a cruel puzzle. Betrayal roared through him like a rising tide. For a second, the long nights they'd spent working together, her warm smile, her thoughtful silence, all of it crumbled into lies. He shot to his feet, the chair scraping violently against the floor. His voice thundered through the hallway as he shouted. "Where is she?" His assistant stammered from outside. "Miss Rivera. She's in the design room, sir." Adrian stormed down the corridor, rage in every step. The door flung open with such force it nearly came off its hinges. Isla was sitting at the drafting table, sketching quietly. She looked up, startled but smiling, completely unaware. "You're back early," she said softly. "I was just about to show you the—" "How about this?" Adrian growled, slamming the laptop onto the table. The screen lit up with the email, the photos, the messages. Isla paled. Her smile vanished. "You're Serena's spy, aren't you?" Adrian hissed. "I let you in. I trusted you. I love you, and you stabbed me in the back." Isla rose, trembling. No, it's not what you think." "Not what I think?" His voice was ice. "Then what are these messages? And that night in Paris? Don't let him find out? That was me, wasn't it?" Tears spilled down Isla's cheeks. "It was a call about the supplier. I was helping you. I don't know how Serena got this, but I swear I didn't betray you." Adrian turned away, fists clenched. Part of him wavered, but the rage burned hotter. "You played your part well," he sneered. "The kind girl, the savior, the one who made me believe again. But in the end, you're just another Serena." "You don't believe me?" she asked, voice breaking. "I did," Adrian said bitterly. "And that's why I feel like a damn fool." He spun away. A coffee mug hit the floor, shattering, just like the trust between them. Isla stood still, broken, tears in her eyes, no words left. "Get out," Adrian said, voice flat, "before I have security do it." The air thickened with silence. Isla turned and walked out, her steps hollow, her presence fading with each one. The door clicked shut behind her. Adrian sank into his chair, buried his face in his hands. And for the first time in 7 years, he wept. Adrian sat alone in his office, surrounded by the silence of a trust shattered. His laptop screen dimmed with time, but the images still burned behind his eyes. Isla's smile, the way she reached for his hand, the whisper he had tried so hard to forget. Now, every memory had turned to doubt. The next morning, an emergency board meeting was held via Zoom. A rumor had spread like wildfire, accusing Wolf Studio of design theft. The source? An anonymous post traced back to an account tied to Serena Vale. Adrian sat tall before the camera, dressed in black, his expression carved from stone. Behind him, the office was spotless, No trace of Isla remained. "Thank you all for joining on such short notice," he began, voice deep and measured. "I know recent rumors have caused concern, but today, I'll show you the truth." He shared his screen. Internal emails from Serena's company appeared, retrieved that morning by his IT team with Marcus's quiet help. In them, Serena ordered her PR division to leak false claims online to sabotage Wolf Studio. "This is the email she sent," Adrian said, voice steady, "and this is her transaction record, showing she hired a third-party firm to recreate our designs before they were ever published." Voices buzzed through the call. Shareholders muttered, concerned. Then, a new participant joined the Zoom. Isla Rivera. Her face appeared on screen, eyes tired but clear, unwavering. Adrian froze, his hands clenched beneath the table. Isla didn't look at him, she looked straight into the camera. "Serena called me a spy," she said, soft but firm, "but I never sold out Wolf Studio. I never betrayed Adrian Wolf." She shared her screen. "This," she said, "is a chat between Serena and a hacker, someone she hired to forge fake messages under my name. Click. This is the payment receipt, direct from her account to the forgers. Click. And this," Isla's voice wavered but didn't break, "is an audio recording of her planning to destroy Wolf Studio's reputation if Adrian refused to surrender control." Silence. Then a shareholder spoke. "If this is true, I move to remove Serena Vale from the board immediately." Another added, "and press charges." Adrian's voice cut through, lower than usual but deadly calm. "I've had all files authenticated by a third party. It's all real." For a moment, Serena appeared on screen, pale, flustered, attempting to speak, but her microphone had already been muted. The vote was unanimous. Serena was expelled. Her shares were seized. Legal action was pending. As the call began to clear, only two screens remained, Adrian and Isla. He stared at her through the screen, didn't speak, just looked. Finally, he said, "You came back, even after I told you to leave." Isla gave a sad smile. "I didn't come back to save you, Adrian. I came back because I never truly left." He couldn't speak. His eyes said enough. As she was about to log off, Marcus's voice crackled through a private line. "She's at a cafe near St. James's Park. If you still want her, don't wait." Adrian didn't. He stood, and he ran. Adrian ran as if time itself were chasing him, not to catch up with it, but to reclaim what he had almost lost. A fine drizzle began to fall, soaking his shirt, but he didn't care. The walls he had built for 7 years were crumbling because of one woman who stayed, even when he pushed her away. St. James's Park greeted him with muted grays and soft winds. Leaves scattered gently across the stone paths, and the trees whispered with autumn's quiet decay. There, beneath the small awning of a cafe by the lake, Isla sat alone. She held a cup of cold coffee in her hands, her eyes staring at the water in silence. Adrian paused a few steps away, chest heaving from the sprint, breath tangled in guilt. He walked slowly to her, careful not to rush the moment. Isla looked up. Surprise flickered in her eyes, then faded into something quieter. "I didn't think you'd come," she whispered. Adrian didn't respond. He didn't sit. Instead, he dropped to one knee in front of her, eyes searching hers like a man afraid of losing what he had just found again. "I'm sorry," he said, voice rough, "for doubting you, for hurting you, for forgetting that you were never her. I let my past define my future and nearly lost my only chance at it." Isla covered her mouth, her body trembling, tears slipping down. "I built walls around my heart because I was scared of being betrayed again. But I became the one who betrayed you," Adrian continued. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking, let me love you again. This time, fully, fearlessly." Isla set the cup down and reached for his hand. She said nothing, just held him. "I never left," she whispered. "I was just waiting for you to come back." Adrian's grip tightened. The rain thickened. but they didn't move. He stood, pulled her close, arms wrapping around her as if he'd never let go again. And then he kissed her. Slow, certain, a kiss full of everything left unsaid, of heartbreak, healing, and hope. That night in the penthouse overlooking the city skyline, they sat close, fingers intertwined, the silence between them no longer heavy. Adrian brushed her hair back, murmuring, "7 years ago, I thought I died with my father. But then you came. You brought life I had given up on." Isla looked up at him, her eyes gleaming in the low light. "You didn't just save me once. 10 years ago, the man who called the ambulance for my mom, that was you." Adrian froze. Isla pulled a faded photo from her bag. A woman stood outside Wolf's studio in a worn uniform, her mother smiling weakly. "The night my mom told me, some people come into your life to help you stand, then disappear. But if you're strong enough, you can follow them and build something beautiful." Adrian traced the edge of the photo, his eyes misted. "You found me," he whispered, "even when I didn't believe in myself." Isla rested her head on his chest. "I didn't need perfect, Adrian. I just needed you to be real." Outside, the rain slowed. The city lights sparkled like fallen stars. And somewhere between brokenness and healing, a new beginning had quietly begun. 3 weeks after their reunion in the park, Adrian arranged a special event in the open square outside Wolf's studio, the very place where all his dreams had once begun, and now where he wanted to make a new promise to Isla. There were no flashing lights, no grand stage, no media coverage, just rows of wooden chairs, soft string music playing, and the golden hue of dusk embracing everything in warmth. Adrian stepped forward, dressed in a crisp white shirt, holding a small velvet box. Isla stood among the crowd, staff, friends, and family around her, but her eyes locked only on him. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes glistened. "Isla!" His voice echoed, low but clear. "I used to think my life was made of losses. I lost my father. I lost trust. I lost the ability to believe in love. But then you came, quiet, unassuming. You walked in like a soft melody in a world too loud, and I heard it." He walked toward her. The crowd faded into the background. It was just the two of them now. "I don't need a contract. I don't need the media. The only thing I need is you." Then, before Isla could even process, Adrian dropped to one knee. "Isla Mendez," he said, voice trembling slightly. "Will you marry me? Not for shares or strategy, but for the promise of forever, from my heart." Tears spilled down Isla's face, happiness radiating from her like light. She didn't hesitate, didn't need to. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." "Adrian." Applause erupted around them. Adrian stood and slipped the sapphire ring onto her finger, a stone the same shade as her eyes the day they first met. He pulled her into his arms, whispering into her ear, "Thank you for staying, even when I didn't deserve it." Isla smiled, pressing her palm to his chest. "Because your heart was always my home." A few days later, they held a quiet wedding on the rooftop garden above Wolf Studio. No luxury, no celebrities, just family, close friends, and the team who had stood beside them through every storm. Isla stepped through the white curtains in a simple silk dress, her hair down, a single red rose tucked behind her ear, just like that night in Paris. Adrian waited, dressed in a soft gray vest, his gaze fixed on her as if she was his entire world. Richard stood as officiant. "Adrian Wolf, do you promise to love, protect, and walk beside Isla through every season of life?" Adrian squeezed Isla's hand. "From now until always," he replied, voice steady and true. "And you, Isla?" She smiled, never looking away. "I chose you when you couldn't even choose yourself, and I will always choose you, through sunshine or storm." They kissed, truly as husband and wife, not a kiss of arrangement, but one born of redemption, patience, and enduring love. Above them, the sky turned golden, wrapping around their embrace like a silent vow whispered by the wind. 1 year later, on a crisp autumn afternoon, the building once known as Wolf Studio now bore a new name, Wolf plus Mendez Atelier. On the glass facade, the updated logo shimmered under the setting sun, a symbol not only of a reimagined brand, but of two souls rebuilt and reunited by love. Isla walked slowly through the showroom, adjusting the silk strap on a winter dress model. Her brown hair flowed gently, her face glowing with calm confidence. As employees passed, they smiled, not out of obligation to their creative director, but out of genuine affection for the woman who inspired them every day. From across the room, Adrian leaned quietly against the doorway, his eyes never leaving her. She was still Isla, the woman from that first late-night coffee, the one who corrected his sketches, who stood with him in the rain in Paris. Now his wife, his partner, his home. He walked over, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "You give this place a soul," he whispered. Isla looked up at him with a soft smile. "And you give it a reason to exist." That night, they sat together on the rooftop terrace, city lights dancing in their eyes like stars. Isla rested her head on Adrian's shoulder, their fingers intertwined, wrapped in a stillness that felt like the whole world had quieted just for them. "I used to think love would distract me from success," Adrian said. "But you became the reason I dream bigger." Isla replied, her voice like a breeze. "Because we didn't just build a company, we built a home." Far below, the city's great Ferris wheel turned slowly, silently, watching them, bearing witness to every step they had taken, from doubt to trust, from pain to love. And now, beneath the velvet night sky, they sat quietly, no longer needing promises. Only presence, only this moment, and that was enough.